What's going on, everyone? I'm James Lynch, and this is Early Look, the show where I take a look at an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, we got a good one. It's the vacant light heavyweight title fight at UFC 283 in Brazil between former champion Glover Teixeira and Jamahal Hill. But before I give you my preview and pick, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. I'd really appreciate that if you could do that. It's 3 easy things, and you get to watch this breakdown as a result. All right, let's get into it. We already got the poster up. Fight that was literally done on the same night as UFC 282. Dana White pulling out all the stops. It is Glover Teixeira, Jamahal Hill. I think it's going to be an incredible fight, and I'm really excited to get into this one. So this is going to be taking place in Rio de Janeiro. Glover's obviously Brazilian, so he'll be the crowd favorite in this one. Jamahal Hill going into enemy territory. And yeah, a lot on the line here for both guys. Let's get right into it. This fight for the vacant title is Yuri Prochazka injuring his shoulder. He's supposed to fight Glover himself. He injures his shoulder. He vacates the title because the shoulder injury is very serious. And you think that, well, it was supposed to be Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev. And unfortunately, that fight ends in a draw, so there's no champion. And Dana White's just like, you know what? I didn't enjoy this fight between Blachowicz and Ankalaev. Let's put Glover in the title fight in Brazil. We need a main event for this card. It wasn't that strong of a card. And Jamahal Hill, I know you're supposed to fight Anthony Smith but in March, but we're going to push it back a bit. You're going to fight for the title instead. Bananas. I know, it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. So let's get into these two fighters and do a quick tail of the tape, and then I will get into both fighters. So you can see there, Glover Teixeira, 33-8 record. Jamahal Hill, 11-1. So big experience gap there for Teixeira. 43 years old to 31. Huge age gap there. 6'2" to 6'4". Hill going to be bigger, and Hill's going to have the reach advantage too, 79 compared to 76. Let's get into the former light heavyweight champion, Glover Teixeira, shall we? And then we'll get to the challenger. Well, I shouldn't say they're both challengers. They're both fighting for a vacant title, Jamahal Hill. So you can see there, Glover Teixeira, 33-8 record. He's got 18 knockouts, 10 submissions, and 5 decisions. He's the number 2 ranked light heavyweight. He's 43 years old. He's 6'2" with a 76-inch reach. He's a Brazilian national wrestling team member. He's the second oldest UFC champion in history behind Randy Couture, and the oldest first-time champion in UFC history. Oldest first-time champion. Quite amazing what he's doing at 43 years of age. And he's also a second-degree BJJ black belt. Glover Teixeira did not have an amateur debut. He went straight to the pros, and get this, June of 2002. What were you guys doing in June of 2002? There's probably people watching this who weren't even born in 2002. That's crazy how long Glover's been doing this. Did not make his UFC debut until May of 2012. You can see there he fought Kyle Kingsbury. Part of the reason he didn't, I mean, you look at the record there, 16-2 at the time. Before joining the UFC. The reason he did not fight in the UFC earlier, because if you remember, he used to train with Chuck Liddell back in the day, the former light heavyweight champion. They were good buddies. It was only inevitable that he was going to be in the UFC. He had some visa issues. He could not fight in the States. That's why you'll see a lot of fights here in Brazil, despite the fact that he was training in the States. So that's one of the reasons why you didn't see Glover in the UFC earlier. And who knows how things would have gone if he would have been there the same time as his buddy Chuck Liddell. Would they have ever fought each other? The possibilities are endless. But anyways, just a little side note I wanted to mention there. Glover Teixeira is 16-6 in the UFC. He's got 13 stoppage wins. Some notable wins for Glover Teixeira include Rampage Jackson, the former champion. Ryan Bader, absolute firefight. If you go back and watch that fight, that was crazy. Rashad Evans, the former UFC light heavyweight champion, knocked him out in the first round. Jared Cannonier, who obviously is at middleweight now. Anthony Smith, an absolutely grueling fight where he knocked out Anthony Smith's teeth in the fight and finished him in the 5th round. Thiago Santos, a fight where he weathered an early storm and came back and finished Santos in the 3rd round. Jan Blachowicz, absolute pure domination on Jan Blachowicz. That was a total beatdown in that fight. And it was crazy because, Jan was coming off that nice win over Israel Adesanya, and Glover went out there, dominated him, and won the title. Incredible story there for him to get it done. And then some notable losses. Fought John Jones, went the distance with him, lost to Phil Davis. One of those fights, if you look back now, kind of an interesting one as far as that fight. Got knocked out in 13 seconds by Rumble Johnson, which is nuts considering, I think some people felt then that, this is the beginning of the end for Glover. And since then, he actually lost 2 fights after that by knockout in the 5th round to Gustafsson. I remember thinking back then, this is the end of the road for Glover, and the run that he's gone on since then, very impressive there. Notable losses, Jones, Johnson, Gustafsson, Corey Anderson, and then obviously Yuri Prochazka in his last fight, in a fight that Glover was winning, and Yuri at the last minute in the 5th round gets a submission at 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Just one of the best fights of the year. Still amazing that fight that ended up taking place there. Glover, to his credit, has been very active in his career. He's only got 2 layoffs that I sort of noted, going from Yuri to Hill. Going from Jan to Yuri. there was a 224-day layoff. And then going from Yuri to Jan, there was Yuri to Hill, I should say, there was a 224-day layoff there as well. But he's been pretty active throughout his UFC career. Maybe that's one of the reasons he's had so much success. He's had a few injuries in his career. Remember, he was supposed to fight Rashad Evans back in February of 2015. There was a knee injury there. That was UFC Fight Night 61. Supposed to fight Misha Serkinov in October of 2017. He had a minor injury in that one. Not sure what that was. And then supposed to fight Jimmy Manua back at UFC Fight Night 137, had a shoulder injury in that one. So he's had a few injuries, but overall, his body's kept up pretty well. He's had a couple close fights. I mean, the most notable one, or I should say he's had one notable close fight, and that was a fight against Nikita Krylov. UFC on ESPN 16 plus 16. That was September 2019, the last UFC card in Canada at the time of recording this. 12 media members scoring the fight for Glover, 4 scoring it for Krylov. So again, most people felt like that was the right decision, but still 40 media members scored the fight for Krylov. Who knows if he loses that fight, where his career goes from there. Always kind of interesting when you're looking at that. Did want to mention the Yuri fight. I mentioned this last time in the breakdown of Yuri and Glover, the rematch, but I thought we'll go through it again just to give some context here. Because again, you look at the fact that he lost to Yuri, but what really happened there? So I went back and looked at that. I remember rescoring the fight. Gave Glover the first round of that fight, gave Yuri the second round, gave Yuri the third round, gave Glover the fourth round, and Glover was he actually stunned Yuri in the 5th round and was likely on his way to winning that fight. So I mean, if all had gone well there, Glover would have won 1-2, possibly 3-2 there against Yuri, but Yuri submits him at the last minute. So very close fight. Again, Yuri did win, I thought, rounds 2 and rounds 3 of that first fight, which was his last fight. And but Glover, definitely came on in the 4th and had some success in that first round as well. So yeah, that was just a wacky fight there with Glover Teixeira. Other than that, that's pretty much everything you need to know about Glover Teixeira. The guy is an absolute legend. And yeah, he's getting another opportunity at a title here at 43 years of age in Rio. Can't script this much better than that. Let's get to Jamahal Hill, his opponent. Who, by the way, if you saw on this channel, Jamal and I debated about his fight, and I'll talk about that a little bit later because Jamal saw my quick video where I did pick Glover, but stay tuned. I'm going to give you my official pick at the end of this video. Okay, 11-1 record there for Jamahal Hill. He's got 7 knockouts, 0 submissions, and 4 decisions. He's 31 years old. He's 6'4" with a 79-inch reach. So Jamahal Hill is 12 years younger. He's got a 2-inch height and 3-inch reach advantage. Jamahal Hill is a BJJ blue belt. So while, in that interview I did with Jamal, if you haven't seen it, it's on the UFC's interviews playlist here. You can watch that. Even though Jamal feels like his ground game is enough to, stave off any sort of submissions there, Jamal is by trade only a BJJ blue belt, which is one of the lower ranks as far as BJJ stripes, but maybe it's one of those things where he didn't need to work on his jiu-jitsu and work that up. Maybe he's working on it and I don't know, they didn't feel like he needed to get it. But yeah, as far as what we know right now, according to Wikipedia anyways, Jamahal Hill is only a BJJ blue belt, whereas Glover is a 3rd-degree black belt. Jamahal Hill has got performance of the night 2 times against Jimmy Crute and Johnny Walker, 2 fights that he won by knockout. He's got fight of the night 1 time against Thiago Santos, another fight that he finished. Jamahal Hill made his amateur debut way back in January of 2016, which, to Glover is like nothing, right? Made his MMA debut September 2017. Check this stat out. Glover Teixeira, by the time Jamal made his pro debut back in September 2017, Glover Teixeira had 31 fights already. There's some fighters who don't even get to 20 fights in their career. Glover had 31 fights. It's absolutely insane if you look at the experience gap there. That's just one thing that really stood out to me. It's like, holy crap. Glover's had 31 fights by the time Jamal stepped into the cage for his first pro fight. Then Jamal's UFC debut, which took place in January of 2020, so like a year later, which is a couple years later, which is crazy. 3 years later, he's making his UFC debut. Glover had 18 UFC fights at that point. So again, just crazy to see what the difference in careers there. So Jamal is 5-1 with 1 no contest. He's got 4 finishes. Jamal Hill should really be 5-1 with 5 finishes because the no contest he had against Kidson Abreu, which he won by ground and pound, he was busted for marijuana. Again, USADA, that's one thing. If you want to go USADA, performance enhancing drugs, that's if you guys want to say that is a fight that shouldn't have counted if someone gets busted, like a TJ Dillashaw, or for example, or something along those lines, that's fine. But Jamahal Hill got busted for marijuana. He should not have a no contest on his record. That should be a win. That was a dumb rule. They've since sort of lightened up on that stuff, but that should be, so Jamal should really be 6-1, not 5-1 with a no contest. It's a silly rule. Just saying that for the record. Some notable wins for Jamahal Hill include Jimmy Crute, Johnny Walker, and Thiago Santos, his last 3 fights, actually. His only notable loss is to Paul Craig, and I know a lot of people, I've already seen people in the comments saying Jamahal Hill's ground game sucks. Glover's going to take him down immediately and submit him. He's got no ground games. I had someone in the comments say he has 0 ground game because he lost to Paul Craig. Well, you could flip that around and say, well, does Magomed Ankalaev have a bad ground game too? Because he got submitted by Paul Craig as well, and Ankalaev's a pretty damn good fighter. So, I mean, we'll find out in this fight, obviously, but I still think you can't take too much away from a quick submission loss. A fight that didn't even end up tapping to, his arm just broke. You know, if his arm is more durable and I don't know, maybe it's made of steel, then maybe he survives that. I don't know, but that's just one sort of thing to notice there as well, right? So we should put OSP in this category as well as far as the notable win, because OSP fought for a title and he actually finished him by a standing TKO. Very impressive there. What else? Jamahal Hill's never had any layoffs. He's never had any major injuries, but again, he's only been in the UFC since 2020. He's only been in the UFC like what, less than 3 years, or about 3 years so far. So that's kind of interesting here. Obviously, Jamahal is finishing most of his fights. He's got one decision here. He's not going to have any close fights, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's go to the odds. So most books having Jamahal Hill as the favorite, just a slight favorite in this fight. And if you watch my initial reaction video when I first, when they first announced the fight the night of UFC 282, my initial pick was Glover Teixeira. I don't normally do this in these early look previews. If I do a reaction video, usually I stick with the pick, but I've given this fight some thought and some time, and I'm still going to maintain that I think Glover is the better fighter on paper. Again, we talked about the edge and experience there, right? Glover's got, like I said, 31 fights by the time Jamal's making his pro debut. Glover's fought the who's who in the weight class. John Jones, Gustafsson, Rumble Johnson. I mean, Yuri, like he nearly beat Yuri. Yuri's amazing. He's one of the best fighters. I think he's one of the craziest fighters out there. It's insane, but I think Jamal's going to do this. The more I think about it, and listen, before people say, oh, you've been influenced or whatever, you've interviewed Jamal. I have, for the record, I have picked Jamal in I think all of his fights, even the Paul Craig fight. I picked him in that one, but there's a couple of things that have been twisting my arm as far as changing my pick on this one. And again, in that video, if you watch it, I said, that's just my early initial pick is Glover. Just off the top of my head, it's Glover, but kind of going through this, there are a couple of reasons why I think Jamahal Hill can win. So the truth is, we don't really know how good or how bad Jamahal Hill's ground game is. We really don't, because we've never seen him put in positions where, he was like close to being submitted, or we don't have any evidence of him like being really terrible on the ground. Like we don't know. I mean, we just have the one fight with Paul Craig. That's not enough of a sample size for me anyways to say that Jamahal Hill has a bad ground game. Now, has he been flawless in all of his fights? No. The Paul Craig loss, and even the Thiago Santos fight, I think he lost a round. I think he lost one of the early rounds in that fight. I want to say the first round he lost to Santos. But you got to look at a couple things here. Number one, Glover's 43. Like at some point, the wheels are going to fall off this thing. You can't be this good for, I know Glover's sort of defying the odds. Like I don't think anyone would have, if you would have told me, back when he fought Krylov that Glover's going to end up winning the title, I probably just said, no way, there's no way he's going to win the title, but he did. So Glover is sort of the exception to the rule in that regard. But typically you do not see 43-year-olds go out there and perform and continue this success. It's just not common. So there's that thing. Like it's a huge age gap here, 31 to 43. Like Jamal right now is in the prime of his career. Glover still appears like he's in his prime, but I mean, at some point, like you got to wonder, like there's got to be some point that he slows down. The other thing that Jamal brought up in this interview, and it's something that I've sort of, went back and looked on, is like, how much damage has Jamal taken in his career? Not a lot. Glover has, though. That fight with Yuri, neither of those guys got out of there unscathed. Yuri threw a lot of good shots at Glover, hit him a lot, not to mention the amount of knockout losses that Glover's had in his career. Like if you go back and look here, Rumble Johnson finishing him quickly. Gustafsson finishing him late in the fight. Jones, definitely was piecing him up in that fight as well too. Like he's taken a ton of damage here. Even Anthony Smith, I think, actually I shouldn't say that. It was more the Santos fight. Santos was laying some good shots in that fight as well too. So there's the damage factor as well. That's another mark against Glover in this fight here. And just the speed of Jamal. Jamal is very fast. Like you don't see guys like Thiago Santos get knocked out. Like even you want to use a little bit of MMA math here. Thiago Santos, went to a decision with Magomed Ankalaev. Jamahal Hill finished him. And I know that was after Ankalaev's fight, but still, it's just very, very interesting to kind of like look at that and say that Hill was able to get it done and finish the fight. And you just look at how Jamal's winning. He's winning early over these guys. Jimmy Crute, really good win there. Johnny Walker, really good win there. Again, I know, Walker has, been finished before. Corey Anderson did the same thing, but still, like these are all quick finishes. Jamal is a fast starter. And the other thing I want to point out as well is sort of like a outside the cage type thing. This is it for Glover. Like if Glover loses this fight, he's never going to fight for a title again, unless for some reason this is a close decision. I just don't see that happening. It's in Brazil. The pressure's on. Glover's got to finish the storybook ending here by winning this title in Brazil. He's got to do that. The pressure's on him. Jamal, he's not really supposed to win this fight. I know the betting odds suggest it, right? He's the favorite, but Jamal's 31. there's time for him if he loses this fight to go back and potentially get another title shot. It could happen. Daniel Cormier was able to do it against John Jones. We've seen guys been able to, pick up a few wins and get right back in the driver's seat. Heck, Anthony Smith is a guy too that I think could potentially get back to a title shot as well. Like we've seen guys that are even a little bit older that can go do that. But this is it for Glover. Like if he loses this, if he gets finished, he's done. He's never going to get an opportunity again. Whereas with Hill, like there's not as much pressure here. Again, he's taking it on short notice. He got the phone call the night of. He's having a shorter camp. Like there's not that much pressure on Hill here. And we'll see if Hill can rise to the occasion. I guess you could also flip it and say, hey, look, Hill's going into Brazil. Everyone's against him. All the Brazilian fans. Glover's the beloved guy. Glover's shown over the last couple of fights he's very tough to finish. Yuri didn't finish him till the 5th round. It's possible, but the more I think about this, the more I think Hill's going to knock him out. And that's going to be my pick for this fight. Does it happen in the 1st round? No. I don't think he finishes him quickly like Rumble Johnson, although I think Hill's got similar power to Rumble. I mean, Rumble, I think, has the most power, I think, out of anyone we've seen at light heavyweight, but Hill's not that far behind. I think Hill gets his timing down in the 2nd round. I think Hill's too fast, and I think he goes in there, and I think he stops Glover Teixeira. We have not seen Jamahal in really any trouble of being finished. Like I said, other than the Craig fight, he's never really had to worry about getting this is the difference between Hill and Yuri. Is Yuri has taken a lot of damage. Remember, Volkan was hitting him pretty good in their fight. Dominic Reyes hit him pretty well. Hill really hasn't had to deal with that. Now, that could be the lack of opposition. It could also be that Jamal's that good and that fast. So that's what I'm banking on here. I am taking sort of a leap of faith here. And I know, again, he's the betting favorite here, but I think Hill gets it done. I do. I think this is his time. I think he's seizing a very good opportunity. I think he's being handed a very great opportunity here. And I think he's going to take advantage of it and get it done. And I think Hill does it. So I'm going Hill by knockout. Now, look, could we be talking about a Glover Teixeira submission win at the end of the day here? Absolutely. Again, we don't have concrete proof of Hill's ground game. Maybe Hill isn't very good on the ground. Maybe he does get taken down and Glover submits him quickly. And maybe he does like a Jan Blachowicz and does that type of fight. That could happen. I'm not looking past Glover from that regard. Again, this to me is a 50-50 fight because I think if you are picking Hill, you are taking a bit of a leap of faith. But I think we've seen a number of fighters that maybe haven't fought the opposition prove to be the real deal. Islam's a good example, right? Islam, hadn't fought a top 5 opponent. He went out there, rose to the occasion, dominated Charles Oliveira. Something like that could happen here. I'm not saying Jamahal Hill and Islam are the same, but what I'm saying is that there's similarities in the sense that Hill maybe has not been tested, but maybe he's just that good. And maybe he does that in this fight. And I'm telling you right now, a 43-year-old who's taken a lot of damage in his last fight, who's coming off a really long layoff heading into this fight, is fighting a 31-year-old who really has nothing to lose. I think you got to take the younger guy here. So I'm going Jamahal Hill by 2nd round knockout to get it done here. Again, I want to preface this by saying in that video I initially did, the reaction video, I said early on, just got into my head, I'm going Glover. But now that I've had a chance to really dig into this, I'm going Jamahal Hill by knockout to get it done. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who are you picking? I know there's a lot of people on Glover's side. I get it. You don't have to tell me Glover's got a better ground game. He's got all this stuff. I get all that. Trust me. I'm taking a leap of faith here, and I'm hoping that Jamahal goes out there and does what he's done in all of his fights, and that's finish, well, most of his fights, and go out there and actually finish Glover Teixeira and get it done. I just think You's on his side. I think the moment is just prime for him to do it, and I think he goes out there and does it and silences the Brazilian crowd. So follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Lynch on Sports. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, youtube.com/Lynch on Sports. While you're there, hit the like button, hit that notification bell. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.